Thanks everyone for joining. I'm really excited to be here. I'm particularly excited about this session because we have Marvin from the data science team here over at Product Madness. Marvin, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the rest of the audience.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited to be here. It's kind of my first event. My name is Marvin Dow. I've been working at Product Madness, which is a mobile game slot company for the last 2 years. And before that, I actually was working in product managers for another mobile game. So I've been in gaming almost all my career. So yeah,
Nice.
Again, happy to be here.
Thanks, Marvin. And the reason I'm very excited about today's chat is that, we do a lot of these webinars, and a lot of the times we invite mobile marketers, user acquisition teams onto the webinar. And I wanted to dive a little deeper on the data science side. And I'm excited that today we're going to be a little more in the weeds and a little bit more technical and making it actionable for mobile marketers. So I hope that you guys are all as excited as I am. And as a brief introduction, I'm Alexi Chemenda. I'm the US Managing Director for Addictive, the leading app retargeting company in the world. And forgive me in advance for the video quality. I'm actually traveling right now. And as you know, you're not responsible fully for the internet connection you have abroad. So we're going to make the best of it. And with that, I'd love to jump in with just some context on what we're going to talk about. And one aspect of what we're going to talk about a lot is models and predictive models. So Marvin, can you can you share more context on what sort of models that you're building at Product Madness, and what are you trying to predict? What are you trying to model out?
Okay, sure. I think let me just move my screen to the correct one first. Okay. Yeah, so the topic today will be talking about the predictive model related to the player lifecycle. So for particularly anyone in the mobile game industry would know that there are multiple stages to a player lifecycle. We have an early one to look at the players who join the games and have not yet made a purchase or conversion. So we have a model trying to predict if the users will make a conversion in the next 28 days. The choice of 28 days is quite arbitrary, but for us, we believe that is the correct time in our particular app, for the user to reasonably make a purchase or not. So that's the early one. Once the player make a conversions, we also want to hope that they stay and make another one. So we have another model, what we call an intermediate lifecycle model, to try to see that if the users who previously made one would make another one in the next, again, 28 days. And another part that is related to this is a later stage, which is on the retention side. We always want to keep the player engaging and playing our games, but we know that sometimes player will churn on their own. So we have a model to try to see if the player will come back to the game or not. And then finally, in relation to all of that, we are primarily an in-app purchase company. However, we know that there will be a lot of users who will play our game without making any purchase. So we try to see if we can actually get a bit more revenue out of them by offering them ads for free coins. In order to do that, we have our ad monetization model to say whether it's more profitable to allow the user to see ads or we wait for them to purchase organically. So yeah, that's and then also we have a few other models, but for this topic today, I think these are the four that I would like to talk about.
Yeah, that's that's a very complete funnel already, in my opinion, and typically, that's actually correlated to what we see when we speak with advertisers, sort of early on, mid funnel, and then churn. The ads monetization we see a little less with among advertisers, so love to dig on there as well. But would love to know, how do you build those models, and what features are obviously you're a casino title, social casino title. What features are the most important features for modeling for casino titles, and how do you build those models?
Yep. Would love to dive into that. So let me just move on to the relevant screen. Okay. as everyone knows, the most important ingredient for data science would be the data. And for us, as a mobile game company, I would say that we are very much blessed because we can capture most of the interactions that a player has within our game. That is definitely the biggest pillar of our data science models. We look at a lot of the different kind of behavioral data that we capture in the app. For a casino app, I would say that, and actually I need to go a bit more context here. We are primarily a slots company game. And so, when you play slot, the biggest thing you can do, the most important thing you can do is spinning. And so the spin for us is definitely the most important one. However, there are many ways that you can slice and dice and look at the spins, right? Aggregating, by aggregating, I can say that this is a sum, is it the mean, is it the max, is it the average, and over what period are you interested in? Is it going to be the last 7 days, the last 30 days, the last 60 days? And so there's already a lot going on there. Besides that, we actually also look at the gap of spins, which is some users will spin every day, which we hope all our users to be like this. But there will be some users who only spin on the weekend, for example. Then there's a gap of 6 or 7 days would be quite normal for this user, but not for the first one. Another way to look at spins is I have some sample data here on the screen. If we only look at the last 30 days, for example, and we try to cut it into 6 non-overlapping chunks of 5 days, we can actually graph the total spin on each chunk into a graph, and we can feed a very simple linear regression line through it to see what is the slope, what is the trend of this player engaging through the game. And in my example, the slope is actually going down, so quite clearly the users is losing interest, and maybe it's time for an intervention. So already you can see that with spin, there's so many ways to engineer features and try to gain different information. And even besides spin, we already have so many other things. We have coin bet. Some player will bet more, and some player will bet less. We have wins. In a slots game, one of the important aspect is the return to player, which is how much coin the player win versus how much they play. And we observe that if the player lose a lot in a streak in the past few days, they also tend to churn a bit more. Sometimes when we try to look at a longer window to predict churn, the number of days played instead of just spinning on a session would be quite helpful. Recency is just a metric to look at what is the last active day compared to today, or we can just look at how many different days in the last 7 days or 14 days. Payment for us is a big features, a big information source. So for users who actually make a purchase, obviously we would know the total amount of revenue, and also we know what is the number of transactions. But even for people who don't make a payment, the number of times they try to open the catalog or the failed payment is a good indication of the intention to pay as well. And besides that, we do use a little bit of demographic data, which is whether the users are using iOS or Android. iOS, people tend to pay a bit more. What country the user comes from. Again, US and Western user tend to pay a bit more. We don't really use Facebook data as in age or gender, but we try to see if the users choose to connect to Facebook, and that gives us indications of the level of engagement as well. So all in all, a lot of things that we use, and when we try to build a model, is always a combination and interaction of this and that, but we know that these are some of the ones that show up more often and appear higher when we look at the coefficient to see which one is more important.
Right, and that's, you mentioned something interesting, and I remember very clearly 6 or 7 years ago, actually, initially we came onto the market with, oh, we're going to use the same model for all of our customers, and you mentioned early on, that some players can be maybe elapse 5-6 days because they only spin on the weekends, and it actually took us, maybe 6-9 months to realize that the value in customizing algos for a customer, and it's been a game changer to actually look at every app at its unique behavior. And I think, obviously we work together, and we've learned on our side that there are certain things, certain specifics that only you and the team, the UA team, the data science team, but the app developer, only they know certain behavioral characteristics. And so we have, we have our data set, we have our user predictions and so on, but that really only is enhanced once we start listening to you as well, and once we start hearing, okay, well, this is what's specific around their titles that we haven't found elsewhere, or maybe that we don't know about.
Yeah, one thing interesting I'd like to add here is that in Product Madness, we're actually operating 3 main titles. And even though the data set that we usually start with would be quite similar because they're all slots game, it turns out in individual title, the most important feature would actually quite differ between this and that because of actual difference within the in-game and how we're doing in the economy and all of that. So this is just a starting point, but we always see it evolve to something different for every different title.
Yeah, and so you mentioned this is a starting point. So let's look at the end point. The end point is obviously, usability. So how good are those predictions, and how accurate essentially you get for the audience out there that works with their data science team? How accurate can the results, or should they expect the results to be?
Right. As everyone in data science would know, it's impossible to make a perfect model. Even though we say that we have quite a lot of information within the app about the users, but matter of fact, it is not enough. There could be users that play every day, and we would think that he would come back the next day, but then he would just go on holiday, or his phone's broken, and he just stopped playing. We just can't predict that. So in order to explain how good our model is, I'll have to use an evaluation metric. It's a bit data science-y. It's called AUC ROC, which is understand for area under the curve. It's quite a simple one in the sense that 50% would be a random guess, and 100% would be a perfect prediction. Everything is spot on. And usually our model depends on title, depends on what actual model, lands between 80 to 95%, which means that it's not perfect, but it's much better than a random guess. And also for us, the model score itself is not the end goal. The end goal is how we actually use it to generate money for the business, and that's something that we'll touch upon later.
Oh, so yeah, I think we can, I would love to touch that now. How do you use this data to, I want to say, enhance the player experience? We're here to talk about player lifecycle. What is, how do you use this data to enhance that player lifecycle and that player experience?
Okay. I'll say I think that the audio was a bit off, so it's a bit hard to hear what you say. But I think I got the gist of the question. So, okay, let's move on to the part about how we actually use this. Right. So with this lifecycle model, obviously what we want is to give a personalization experience for individual users. And we do that by segmenting the users using our model. Let's say that, let's start with our churn model, for example. There will be some users as a model give a higher score, which indicate a high risk of churn. And for that, in order to improve the retention, we give them a new flow when the user can come in every day and collect a stamps on a daily basis to get some free coins, which make them more incentivized to come back every day. At the same time, we want to be careful about this. And when we give free coins, we don't want to give them so that we cannibalize our organic in-app purchase ourselves. That is the cannibalization part is important because it's going to recur when I talk about the other model as well. For our early lifecycle and intermediate lifecycle model, we want these two models focus a bit more on the payment side. And so when we see that the model indicate a segment of the users not going to convert organically anytime soon, it's time for us to intervene by giving some sales and giving them some discounts to entice them to pay more when we think that they wouldn't do it by themselves. And the ads monetization model is one where for I would say 96 to 98% of our users, when they actually don't make any in-app purchase, we try to see which one will not do that, and we give them the ability to actually click on a button to see the ad. So we offer them when they are low on coins, so that they get more coins, they get more active in the game, and we also get a little bit of money from the app side as well. It's a small part, but it adds up really quickly because we have a lot of users. And again, we were really careful here not to damage the organic in-app purchase. And with all of that, it sounds fancy, but how do we actually prove that it works? In product madness, we use a model to do correlations, but we prove causation with A/B testing. We always, when we have a model and we have a new segment and we want to test a new offer or flow, we run an A/B test and compare to the control group to see that the model they actually improve in terms of retentions or revenue. And that is our golden compass in order for it to work.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you mentioned incrementality measurement. And by the way, let me know if my audio is better now.
I think it's better now, yes.
It is. Awesome.
Yes.
You mentioned incrementality as sort of the North Star or a compass for the whole company. And I think, I mean, as the industry grows and as app developers evolve and get ready as well post, iOS 14.5 and so on, incrementality has become key already in the past. But if it wasn't key up until today, it certainly will become key for everyone out there. And for everyone in the audience who is maybe either using incrementality but a custom methodology or not using incrementality, for everyone to be on the same page, incrementality is really the best way to measure the success of any operation by holding out a portion of the audience and performing an action, and only one type of action on a target group, and you compare and contrast the results between the control and the target group. And there are a few key elements that we should mention that may sound obvious to some, but I'll put it out there. But you want to make sure. And the biggest mistake I see in those incrementality tests is it's not an apples to apples compare. Like when people make mistakes, typically they make a mistake by not making an apple to apple comparison, by sub-selecting a group of users that is not representative of the whole group, or by choosing one geo for one group and then the other geo for another group. So I think my biggest takeaway, we've been measuring incrementality on all of our campaigns since 2015 or so, 2016, sorry, or so. And the biggest learning in 5-6 years running incrementality measurement is you have to have a big data size, a big, let's say, volume, a high volume of data points, but also apples to apples comparison, no bias in user selection. And only then you can start to look at, okay, well, now I'm confident in my baseline, and what is the actual incrementality read that I get from there. So again, probably a lot of the audience already is familiar with that. Probably some are not. So hopefully this is good to keep in mind as well, as we've seen a lot of mishaps on incrementality groups.
Yes, I would like to echo what Alexei just said about that. Is that incrementalities, or what we call A/B tests, definitely the most important tool in order to prove that something actually works. But I would like to caution the audience that not all A/B tests will result in success. I can share that for us, for example, our monetization models and the new flow is a massive success, and the revenue that we get from ads actually increased by 5 times compared to before. But for some other one, it doesn't work so well. So for example, our early lifecycle models, in one title, in one case, we get a 5% uplift in revenue, but in other case, actually inconclusive. And that is it's an iteration process. We look back at the test, we try to do different thing with the threshold, we try to do different thing with the offer, and that we test again, and only then that we gradually get to a better point. It's just impossible to expect success in the first try.
Yeah, and it makes me laugh because you mentioned, one was a success, one was inconclusive, and this reminds me a lot of our data science teams where we run experiments and they're either very successful or we still need to iterate on them, and it's unclear what the results are. So
at least it's not bad. At least it's not that big changes. That's good enough.
Exactly. Awesome. So that's really an interesting topic for me, and one I'm clearly excited about. One thing that I always get as a question from our clients is, how big should the audience size be, and like what kind of segments? Like, can you share a little bit more specifics into simple things like the size of your team, the size of the data points that you're playing with, and pragmatic data points that help the audience also figure out, okay, how relatable is Marvin's team and product managers to their companies?
Yep. Yeah, happy to share that. Just let me move up a bit. Okay. Yeah. So we mainly operate 4 apps in terms of data size because of all the data files that we have. We have roughly 140 different terabyte of data in our data warehouse. We have about 1.5 million daily active users. We have about 1.6 billion in-game events daily. So already that's a lot of data. I would say that also it kind of really depends on the scope and the questions that you're working on. In some model, when we try to prediction, we actually have data sets of millions of unique players to work with. But when we look at the user for our early lifecycle model, we only care about the users that want to make a payment. So the data set can shrink down to maybe only 200,000. And that will still be enough. It really depends on the data and how informative is your data in order to work with. Happy to share that right now in the company, we have 18 data scientists split into 3 teams. One team work closely with the game side, one team work closely with the UA side, and one team work with core models and engineering.
Nice. So I think that's so the number of data points and the number of DAU is obviously very specific to every game. So hopefully, that helps the audience understand where Product Madness is as a company and how it relates and how it compares to them. One interesting piece there is the ratio of the daily user, the DAU, and the number of data scientists also related to the number of titles that you have. So it's a good balance to keep in mind. Okay, Product Madness has these 4 titles. The team is spread across 18 people. Gives you a good idea of ratio, and maybe will encourage some advertisers to invest in the data science team, in their data science team. I see some data science team with 5 apps and 2 data scientists, and it's very challenging for them. And every time a topic comes up, it's always a struggle and a bandwidth issue. So I think this is a very good data point for a lot of companies out there to push to invest in data science teams and recruit talent more on that front. So I want to, we're almost at the end here, and there's one thing that I did want to talk about and ask you about is, we feel it on our side at the company level. We feel it for every single one of our customers. There's always some sort of struggle, that's not the right word, but there's always question marks around, oh, my data science team wants this, but it's not making my life easier. And so there's a bit of back and forth between data science teams and user acquisition teams. Looking at the audience, mostly user acquisition teams and marketing managers and so on. Can you share from, it's a case of you're one against the rest of the world here. Can you share from the data science perspective, what is the best way to work what is the best possible collaboration between marketing teams, user acquisition teams, and data science, And what piece of advice would you give to marketing teams to improve that collaboration and that relationship?
Yeah, definitely something that I can speak from experience here. I would think that is kind of a stereotype that data scientists are a bunch of snobby, non-cooperative nerds. I would say that the nerds part probably correct, but not the first two part. We very much the same as you. We're humans. We chatty, we friendly, and we want to work for the same purpose, which is to improve the company, right? The only difference I would say is that we abide by the scientific method, and we want things to be statistically rigorous before we can actually make any improvement. And so, in order to work effectively between the UA team and the data science team, I think there's a few things I can speak about. The first one definitely is scoping. So if you come to the data science team and you want to ask them to do a piece of project, let's say, predict how successful this new initiative will be, then we have to sit down and define success. What actually means success by this case? Is it ROAS, return on ad spend, or is it another KPI? And one important thing is you should not move the goalposts. If you come in 1 week, expect one thing, and then next week come in and ask another thing, that doesn't make any life easy at all. The second thing is once you got a project going, I think a bit of constant communication, even though it sounds obvious, is still the key here. Just come in for checking on the project, how's it going, what are the obstacles, and feel free to ask us to explain to you the different concept and what we are trying. A bit of brainstorming never hurts, and sometimes actually beneficial because the data science team needs the knowledge from the UA team in order to actually build a good model, or sometimes just not waste time on random things. Finally, this one is what works for product managers, and I cannot say that it works for everyone. But because of how our organization is structured, we have a team of data scientists working full-time on UA topics, me included. So that level of commitment really allows for a lot more communications and allow just more time to build rapport and trust, and so that we know that we can always have each other backs when we work on a project or when we present a new idea that we want to test out. It works for different companies, but I could say that it definitely works for us.
That's awesome, and we've seen it, with our interactions with Addictive and Product Madness working together for a long time now. The collaboration has been across all fronts, and not just an account management team and a user acquisition team. You have a very talented, actually we were on the show with Christina from your team as well a few weeks ago, and it's not just about having the account management team and the UA team or the retention team. It's really, okay, we have to all sit in a room, and we've learned, and with you and with other partners as well, that, as I pointed out earlier, you have data and expertise on your side about Product Madness. We have data and expertise about globally the ecosystem, less of a sniper shot at Product Madness, more here's how users behave in general. And when we put these two things together, that's when the magic happens. And that's why I'm really excited about, I think that, with iOS 14.5 or 0.6 now and above, we see more advertisers relying on predictions. And if you have less visibility on deterministic data, then you might as well get better at predictive analytics. And so I think you're sitting in a great spot where a lot of companies are going to start investing more in data science and hopefully yield results just like Product Madness has with you and the team. So it's a very exciting time for app developers out there, and for data scientists in particular, I think.
Yeah, completely agree on that.
Awesome. I want to wrap up the chat here. I want to make sure that the audience is good, is captivated, and hopefully appreciated your insights here. As I mentioned, we always have marketing teams on the shows, and we wanted to have really a deeper dive on, hey, let's look at data science team. We work a lot with data science team. Let's take a deeper dive there. So hopefully audience appreciate it, and everyone learn something and is able to get back to their job with something new on the horizon as well. So I'm not sure if we're able to take questions, but I haven't. I don't believe I've seen that. But nonetheless, I did want to thank everyone for joining. A big thank you to Marvin as well for sharing a lot of great insights, for taking the time. Let's remind everyone you're based in London, so you're not at 10 a.m. or what is it in San Francisco? 11 a.m. PT. So hopefully you're going to have a nice dinner after that. And I did want to thank everyone else for joining, and hopefully everyone will enjoy the last few sessions of the day. Back to you, James.
Yeah, thanks both you. That was great. I loved some of the flow charts there and the diagrams, really going into the details on the space you're in. And yeah, to echo those thoughts. Thanks, Marvin, for taking part. Great.
Yeah, again, yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, good. See ya.